It was just a serendipitous moment, Brianna. We were able to catch up with him as he was leaving from making that statement after leaving the courthouse. And I asked Roger Stone if he had any comment to CNN. I asked him about the charges he's facing, as well as what it was like when the FBI showed up at his residence earlier this morning. This is what he had to say to us. Mr. Stone, any comment for CNN?
Nice to see you guys at my house this morning.
What do you say about the charges, Mr. Stone?
They're false, and I will be completely vindicated.
What was it like when the FBI showed up?
Not surprising.
The indictment says that you were coordinating with senior Trump officials, campaign officials. Who were the officials?
False.
No indication on who those officials were, Mr. Stone?
They don't exist.
Anything that you'd like to say to clear the record?
I think I've been pretty clear on this. Tune in to some of the shows tonight. You'll see that I supported the president. I've made my statement. Nothing.
You heard him there, Brianna. I asked him if he, who these unnamed senior Trump officials, senior Trump campaign officials were, unnamed in the indictment. He says there weren't any. They don't exist. He seemed to be in incredibly good spirits considering the seriousness surrounding him, the charges that he's facing. We saw him as he left the courthouse throwing a victory sign and being incredibly defiant as he made a statement to the press. Brianna?
Indeed. Nick, thank you for bringing us that interview. Nick Valencia there in Fort Lauderdale. Now we have Dana Bash, Gloria Borger, Jeff Zeleny with us, and former Justice Department prosecutor Joe Marino. First off, Roger Stone, Gloria, deny everything, because it's hard to believe. I mean, it defies belief. You wouldn't have an indictment. You wouldn't have this charging document where senior officials that he was coordinating with are laid out in there without evidence of it, and he's just saying it doesn't exist. So that's not believable.
And emails and texts and, all kinds of documentary evidence. I mean, we know what his mantra is, which is deny, 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 and that's what he's clearly going to continue to do. I think the bigger story today, and I'd be curious as to what you think of this, as an attorney, because I am not.
She just plays one on TV.
I just play one on TV. is that they seem to be, with all of these indictments, 6 of them so far, the special counsel seems to be making a larger point here about a conspiracy to defraud the government of the United States. So if you look at all of these separate indictments together, at some point, he may just connect the dots here for the American public, and we don't know when that would be, and say, there was a conspiracy. I mean, in that notion here that a senior Trump campaign official was directed, this passive tense, to contact Stone about any additional releases from WikiLeaks. What the special counsel is saying here is that other people were involved in this. And so we've already had indictments. We could have some more, but I do think we're beginning to see something take shape here that's larger than individual collusion.
Joe, the picture of collusion, if all you have to do is read this document, and the picture is pretty damning of what Roger Stone was doing, and yet you look at the counts, and it's for lying, it's for obstructing, doesn't say conspiracy. And because of that, you have Roger Stone and his lawyer and even the president hiding behind this, there's no collusion. You give us the real story here.
Well, sure. I mean, you can put a brave face on anything, and I would expect the defense to do that. That's their job, right? There's a lot of words in here, and to Gloria's point, you wouldn't need 24 pages and all these facts just to lay out a claim that a person was a dirty trickster and lied about it. In the narrowest sense, that's what Roger Stone did, right? He engaged in political dirty tricks, and then he lied about it to Congress, and he encouraged someone else to lie. But when you look at all the language in here, I don't think it's an accident that it talks about being directed by a member of the Trump campaign, talking about in depth where, the extent of the, not just once, but numerous times, Roger Stone went back to the source, asked about the timing and the content and the strategic value of certain emails. So, look, this is not a narrow case. It must be looked at in the bigger picture. And, while there's no promising where it goes, I don't think it's an accident these facts are laid out in this level of detail.
And I think the question here is how often were Roger Stone and Donald Trump talking back during those days? There aren't a lot of aides who knows specifically. A couple people who were right around him, who saw him on the phone might know. But that was always a frustration for so many campaign officials that, gosh, who is Donald Trump talking to? He loves to spend his time on the telephone, and Roger Stone was one of his.
That's always a frustration.
It absolutely is. So the question is, were they talking? There aren't that many people who could have directed a campaign official. So that's the central point here.
Official.
Right, exactly. It was a very small campaign. The senior officials could sit at this table. I mean, it was really small, so we should keep that in mind.
And just to drill down even more on what you just said, Corey Lewandowski, who was the campaign manager, not at the time of this paragraph that you just read, actually, no, he wasn't. He was already fired a month before. But he has said on CNN and elsewhere that this specifically was a very big frustration, not just that the president was on the phone, but that he was on the phone with Roger Stone. So the question is the president that person who directed, or is it Paul Manafort? And basically, the list couldn't be that long because there weren't very many people on the campaign in general, certainly not very many people who could direct a senior official.
And Joe, real quick, because we have to get in a break, but we would say, well, the argument of collusion, how would Roger Stone have known? How would he have known that if he's dealing with WikiLeaks, he is essentially dealing with Russia? Well, the DNC had made it clear that they were hacked. We found out in June of 2016. In July, there was a release of DNC emails by WikiLeaks. And even after that, Roger Stone, with input, direction, coordination from Trump campaign officials, is still going about this, trying to seek information. So that is the line there, right? That should have been so obvious to him and others that, hey, look at this very clear Russia connection.
He comes out in his opening statement to the House in his testimony and says, well, there's this unverified claim that Russia was involved. And then, in response to having to produce any documentation regarding the House's mission, which was to look into Russian interference, he says, I don't have any text messages or emails or anything.
Oops.
Now we know he's got a whole trove of them. So he was obviously trying to thread that needle.